Any tips for speeding up combat or making it more immersive?
This is more of a problem in some games than others. Some games, you've got critical hits, there's high deadliness, things like that that help keep combat short and help you be more descriptive about what is going on, though you might have to modify the text of a crit or whatever somewhat. After all, if you're reading out the same result on the table time and again, even if you've got tables with hundreds of entries, it is eventually going to become somewhat repetitive, so you always need to put your own spin on it somewhat to keep it interesting. I think this is really much more of a problem when it comes to games like Dungeons and Dragons, where you have a hit point bar and you whittle it down and then they die. Because quite often creatures become big pools of hit points, bullet sponges in video game terminology, and so you're having to come up with descriptions over and over again throughout combat. That said, being descriptive is one of the best ways to keep things immersive, and in something like Dungeons and Dragons where you have to worry about those huge hit point bars, it's probably better to describe armor taking the blows or shields splintering or swords chipping, things like that, as the hit points are reduced, and saving the more visceral description for the last couple of hits. So, you lunge at the orc with your sword, he deflects it with his shield, grunting in pain as it bruises his arm. You deflect his blow and strike him in the face with your pommel. It breaks his pig nose, and he staggers back, shaking the blood and the confusion from his head to rejoin the battle. You manage to slash, and this time you get a full proper hit across his gut, cutting through his leather armor and spraying greenish, brackish blood over both yourself and him. You swing down hard, cleaving through his collarbone and his armor down into his chest cavity. With a final grunt, the orc dies. Yeah, something like that, just off the top of my head. Read lots of descriptions of combat. Consider the effects of different weapons, and just mix things up as best you can. You can repeat yourself, just change it slightly. The English language has more adjectives than any other language. Use them all. Use obscure words. After all, if you're going to learn about obscure pole arms from the 15th century, you might as well throw in a few archaic terms for various wounds and so on. Cut him from his gizzard to his lights. Shit like that. If you've got hordes of enemies, it can be distracting to keep track of each one individually. So make a list, check it twice. 20 goblins. 5 hit points, 4 hit points, 3 hit points, 8 hit points, 7 hit points, 6 hit points, whatever else. And then as the combat is going on, don't track each one individually. Start at the top, work your way down, and if someone does enough damage to take out a goblin, stop there. And just go through like that. I talk about that in another question someone asked about house rules in more detail. But that's super helpful, especially for, again, games like D&D. Push people to make their move immediately. Don't let them dither. And maybe get a co-GM. That could be helpful sometimes. For players, character is dead and you haven't managed to bring in another character yet. Then someone else around the table who can handle some of that stuff for you. Why not make use of them? So that's always useful. Hope that helps.